Good morning, Codger Biker here. Welcome to the voyage to the bottom of my mind. So, I don't know if you've watched any of my other videos, but I recently returned from a journey across to the East Coast, which is where I lived when I grew up and where I got into motorcycling from about the age of 13, 14 onwards. Many years ago. Anyway, I had a great time during the trip. Old Ludwig here developed a leak. Now I can't be sure that it was actually during that journey. I think he's probably been leaking for a while, because I have noticed sometimes when I started him in the morning there'd be a cloud of steam which would then disappear, which is classic signs of this 790 engine thermostat hose leak. I have to say, since I posted online that I had the issue, loads of people got back to me, so kind, telling me of their experiences and what the issue was and how they dealt with it, and commiserating with me because the dealer, or at least the service department, didn't really want to know particularly. And so I managed to sort it myself. Well, I think I have. There is every possibility it will recur apparently, because it could be the actual thermostat housing. And my own view is it probably is, if you over tighten it, you could damage the thermostat housing, which means it will leak again. That's just a guess, I actually don't know. Putting that to one side for a moment, I then watched a brilliant interview with Henry Cole. I nearly called him Henry Rollins. Henry Cole this morning on TMF. If you haven't watched it, I really would recommend that. It was just great fun, really, just see somebody who's enthusiastic as Henry is, and old TMF himself. Really good piece of film, or video, whatever you want to call it, MP4. I'm looking forward to the second part of it. But one thing that struck me was something Henry Cole said, that these bikes have their foibles, and that word foibles is a way of justifying to yourself the craziness of owning motorcycles in this day and age. Well, then the question is, after nearly 4 months of riding this bike and coming up to 2,000 miles, and having had two relatively major foibles, one is that I had to have the LCD display replaced, which was not a big deal in itself, but it just took the service department weeks and weeks to get around to doing it. And then of course a recent radiator pipe leak, which had me concerned, because I probably had 400 miles to go at the point when I noticed it. And I did do those 400 miles and the bike never overheated, but there was an alarming puddle every morning, which is not what you want to see. Call it a foible if you like. So the question I'm asking myself is, do I have buyer's remorse? Was buying this bike a mistake? Well, I have to say I don't know of any other bike that can do what this bike does. I've tried a few. Tried a lot actually, looked around. This bike, for me personally, I mean, it wouldn't suit everybody obviously, but for me personally, it's just the best fit for me. It's exactly what I want. It'll cruise on the motorway, it'll do a little bit of off-roading, it's not heavy, it handles brilliantly, it's got plenty of power, it does everything I want in a motorcycle. The downside obviously are those issues which, if I had a Honda, I very much doubt I would have had any issues at all. Not that Hondas are perfect, they've had recalls, but my experience of Hondas has always been they just work. But I think we live in an age now where nobody fixes anything anymore. Most people that you see driving around are in PCP cars, which I thought was a drug, but apparently it is. So you don't have a car ever that's over 3 years old. You don't ever own a car. You live with your parents, so you can pay it every month. Sorry, I'm exaggerating, but there's a large element of it. You know, people won't be seen in anything over 3 years old in England anymore. And I'm talking about kids who just passed their test, want a brand new car now, and they want a Mercedes or an Audi or a BMW, and all the mates have got them, so there's peer pressure. The upshot of that is nobody fixes anything. I'd imagine a lot of them change the car when the ashtray's full. Yeah, when the ashtray's full of avocado stones, they change the vehicle. But I grew up in an age where I had my first motorcycle was a rally runabout, which was £8, not working, which I bought with a friend, and together we got it working after a fashion and rode it around, even though we weren't old enough, with no crash helmet, up and down railway lines and a little bit on the road just to get there. Can't really call us hooligans, as a thing only did about 10 miles an hour. But we learnt so much about how to get things to work, how to clean carburetors, timing, cleaning plugs, just the basic stuff, how brakes worked, not that we really bother with those. So we got a thorough background really in motorcycle mechanics just by having fun. We weren't on a PlayStation or an Xbox or a PC, and we certainly never had PCP deals. My first car was a Renault 6 TL 1100, which had holes in the front wings, which I filled with some mesh and car body filler, and just sprayed over them in a colour that was close. That was it. And we did thousands of miles going to gigs in that. Used to get 6 or 7 of us in it. If it broke down, we fixed it. If it wouldn't start, we pushed it. And there was a community then. I know this is all our yesterdays now, but there was a community then where if your next door neighbour's car wouldn't start, you'd lend them a hammer to hit the solenoid with to get the starter motor working, or you'd give them a push down the road and they'd do the same to you. And everybody had a basic sort of understanding of how to get things working. So why am I rambling? Well, to put it into perspective, a leaking hose back then would have been considered just an everyday occurrence, just something you had. If you wanted a vehicle, you'd have a leaking hose to tighten up, a Jubilee clip or a fan belt to adjust. That's what you did. So I'm trying to put into perspective the slough of despond that descended upon me when I noticed that water. It may well be that the bike will have to go back to the dealers for a new thermostat housing at some point, I don't know. Or it may be that my keyhole surgery to tighten it will be sufficient. Time will tell. So, do I regret buying this bike? No, not one little bit. Here I am today, just for no other reason than I can, having a little ride around the back roads around here, little loop that I do. Because I find owning a motorcycle is, for me anyway, not just about showing off or looking good. I certainly don't look good. And one thing about the 790 Adventure, you couldn't exactly say it was a looker, although it does get a lot of attention because it's new. I like to ride because I find it psychologically really healthy, a really healthy thing to do. I've tried transcendental meditation, a little bit of yoga, doing the plank, things like that. None of that seems to work. Put me on a motorcycle and send me out into the countryside for half an hour. I get back and I'm really happy. So, old Ludwig here, expensive as he is, I suppose compared to private psychotherapy, is cheap. Since mentioning the fault on YouTube, a few other people have got back to me with things they've had. LCD display, or TFT I suppose you've got to call it now. The TFT display is a common one, moisture inside it on cold days. The hose leak is common to the Duke and the Adventure, from what I can tell. Basically the same engine. It's not a particularly elegant solution in my mind, that hose to that thermostat housing hidden away behind a radiator that's difficult to access. Perhaps in later versions of the engine they'll sort that. Would be nice for them to have done it for this bike. Although I didn't have a problem on the Duke, I must admit. Maybe just unlucky on this bike. Other issues, one or two people have said their bike has just stopped for no reason. I've not had that, thankfully. That would be quite alarming. And another subscriber told me that his bike wouldn't start yesterday. There was they just got ignition fault when he put the key in, and then that cleared. So obviously these are some of the perils of being an early adopter. Being an early adopter is always going to be problematic, I suppose. But just now, out here in the countryside, going around this corner, there's another motorcycle behind me. I have no regrets. I don't have much of an income to spare, but what I do have I'm quite happy to spend on old Ludwig. Of course I wouldn't be happy if I was stuck on the other side of the country and a fault arose where I couldn't get home. Now you do have KTM rescue for 2 years, which is included with the bike. What then after 2 years? Well, because I actually bought Ludwig to keep. He was kind of a semi-retirement present to myself. It's not really something I'd want to particularly change. Warren? Take it easy. So do I regret buying this bike? I think you know the answer. Particularly as I've just bumped into a fellow two-wheel traveller. Oh, it's such a coincidence to bump into somebody riding a bike from 1987 that he's done up himself, riding around, works perfectly. Would be a Honda, obviously. So 32-year-old bike. No, I do not regret buying this bike. I love going out and riding, and this is the perfect bike for me at the moment, so how could I regret it? So any money. Who needs a full wallet anyway? Just more weight to lug around. On that note, I wish you a good day. Codger Biker is out. Bye.